members of ELISA, inaugural folks, and dear guests. Welcome to the first RBL Symposium hosted here at Istanbul Technical University. We will start our program with a mini concert performed by the ITU, Turkish Music State Conservatory. We thank the ITU Turkish Music State Conservatory for their wonderful performance. Now it gives me great pleasure in inviting Professor Dr. İsmail Koyuncu, Rector of Istanbul Technical University, to deliver their speech.
Dear members of ELISA, INOCOR, and UNFOLD, dear guests, I would like to welcome to Istanbul Technical University. It is an honor to be hosting you at ITU for the research-based learning symposium. Unfortunately, we have been forced to use virtual means of communication up until recently, so it's a pleasure to have all of you here today. We are in the second year of ELISA project, and everyone has been working very hard for the mission towards realizing the ELISA European University. Most recently, with the addition of INOCOR and UNFOLS, we are successfully and sternly moving forward with the project. Where we stand today, which I believe my fellow rectors will agree, is due to the efforts of Team ELISA. The Alliance has become a large family. Together, we have learned to develop a plan, build a work, break down structure, identify risks and stakeholders, and create a communication through the Alliance. As a result, we have started to reap the fruits of everyone's hard work. However, we still have a long journey to accomplish what we have set out to do. I am aware that there are obstacles we need to tackle, but nothing that we cannot surpass together. We are better together. I think it is safe to say that we all come from a rigorous style of education, and a lot has changed since. The world is advancing, and since the end of the past century, there has been a growing importance and recognition of involving undergraduate students in professional research activities in the university ecosystem. It is time for university students to come out of being a passive receivers of information and become active inquirers to meet the demands they will come across when they enter the professional world. This is where RBL comes into the equation, where universities promote competencies of students through activities linked to research. In this culture, students will not only learn from new discoveries and research methods, but also engage in the research processes themselves, thereby participating in the finding of new knowledge. Learning inside and outside of the classroom will allow students to face real-life issues as the need for change has become apparent in so many ways. Just a few examples are climate change, poverty, gender awarenesses, and the demand for sustainable cities and communities. It is apparent that universities and scientists need to carry the torch forward. They need to lead the way to train people who will eventually prepare the world to find solutions to sustainable development goals. Everyone here believes in science, and we all know that these challenges and their solutions can only be overcome through science. The new engineering model that we all are aiming for together with ELISA will lead us to this. I look forward to hearing the discussions and outcomes of the event, and thank you once again for attending. I wish you all a pleasant time at ITU and Istanbul. Thank you very much.
We thank Rector Koyuncu for their speech. I would like to now invite the ELISA Executive Director, Sofia de Aguiar, to deliver their speech.
Good morning. Before taking the floor, I would like to leave you some minutes with the EELISA video. I'm sure that it's coming. Okay, perfect, don't worry. Some technical problems will leave you with the video a bit later. Thank you so much. In the video, we have a young girl, which is Laura, who's telling us a story. It's a young girl who's dreaming to become an engineer, an ELISA engineer. This girl in the video that you could go to the website and see, says us that as scientists, engineers, and citizens, we together have a goal to accomplish. And that goal is to contribute to make the world a better place, a healthier, peaceful, more equal, and inclusive. To transform society, to make it more sustainable. This is also what brings us together. Good morning to all. My name is Sofia de Aguiar. I'm Executive Director for ELISA. And it's a pleasure. I'm deeply honored to be here today and being able to participate in this first research-based learning symposium, which is the first major public showcase of the learning innovation of our alliance and, of course, of its ELISA communities. I would like to thank you, Istanbul Technical University, Rector, Vice-Rectors, dear ELISA ITU team, for your engagement in the contribution for the development and for the success of the alliance. Thank you so much. And also, of course, for organizing this first research-based learning symposium, which will be, I'm sure, the first of many to come. Today, I would like to emphasize three main ideas that I mainly also delivered in the ELISA video, that this teenage girl who dreams to become an engineer, which I believe shape our common journey. And these ideas are why we are together, what we can do, and how we can do it. The first idea gives the shape to ELISA's vision as a part of European initiatives. ELISA strives to promote growing roles of universities in identifying and helping to solve challenges faced by their societies. The challenge that was given to ELISA and a few other European universities is to help and boost Europe's higher education transformation and empowers Europe's universities as drivers of social, systemic, and sustainable transformation. This is the common purpose that brings us together. The second idea refers to what we can do together to accomplish this goal. And one of the central pillars of the Alliance is to form impact and knowledge-creating teams of teachers, researchers, students, citizens, business, companies, and NGOs. These are the ELISA communities, each one driven by its own mission of social impact, delivering solutions to society's problems by working together across disciplines, languages, and borders. Finally, the third idea that I would like to bring, how we will do that. We believe that new realities call for new ways of learning. The acronym of ELISA includes learning innovation at its very center. This is where the Symposium of RBL frameworks comes in, because solving complex societal challenges is an open, creative, but systemic process in we all have a role to play. While developing the model of the European engineer rooted in society, ELISA European universities give us the opportunity and the space to collaborate, learn together, and offer inclusive and enriching opportunities for our students. I encourage you to make the most of this symposium, to learn while sharing your knowledge, and enjoy everything in Istanbul due to this detailed preparation of our colleagues. I especially encourage you to get to know new colleagues, because I can think no better opportunity than this to start building our living tissue of our alliance. Thank you for the ones that are attending online, and for the others that took the time to come and to join us in this joint effort. And also, of course, in particular, to the ones that have accepted to share their experience and best practices, also aspirations within ELISA. Thank you for your commitment. Together, we are ELISA. Together with our mission and with your motivation and willingness, we can make a difference. Thank you so much. I wish you, all of you, a really fruitful day. Thank you.
On our planet are saved from extinction. That is what some grown-ups say. But today, almost 10 years apart, I wonder how we can accomplish that. My mom says there is a good chance to make it happen if we all learn how to take the green path to a more sustainable way of living. If we embrace the know-how of experts, students, teachers, and society, and we connect it to real people's needs. If we mix disciplines, people, and ideas, we design technology and combine resources to solve challenges with love and creativity. If people go beyond boredom to learn and work in cooperation with others, celebrating diversity and inclusiveness. My mom is a scientist and says
all these transformations have started, and I want to be part of it. That is why I will study to become an engineer in 2030. An EELISA engineer.
Thank you, Sophia. Our next guest is our keynote speaker, Professor Mahesh Krishnamurthy. He has joined us today from Illinois Institute of Technology. Professor Krishnamurthy received his PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Texas at Arlington and is currently a professor of electrical engineering and academic director of the Kaplan Institute of Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship at Illinois Tech. He has co-authored over 150 scientific articles and patents, book chapters, and technical reports, and has been awarded several teaching and research awards. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite Professor Krishnamurthy to deliver his speech.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you first and foremost for having me here. It's been an absolute pleasure for the hospitality by the EELISA program. Thank you very much for inviting me. Istanbul Technical University, you've been extremely kind and gracious, especially coming out of the COVID season. It's wonderful to be able to talk about some of the work we've been doing in the back and just share this with a broader audience. It's a wonderful opportunity. My name is Mahesh Krishnamurthy, and I am I just have a slide coming up next to introduce myself just a little bit. I loved the video that we just started with from EELISA. I thought it was I have a 7-year-old daughter, so that's always something that resonates with me. That as she gets older, I'm hoping she also finds that inspiration. She also finds that excitement about making a true difference wherever she goes. So the topic today I actually was wanting to share with you is based on some of the work we've been doing for actually about 25 years, and I've only come in over the last few. It's basically on mentorship, leadership, and entrepreneurial mindset, specifically a vision for experiential learning. We want to revolutionize STEM education, and that's what we're going to talk about. So with that, I would like to go ahead and get started. Can we go to the next slide, please? So just a little bit about myself. Primarily, I am a faculty with electrical engineering. I've been with Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago for nearly 14 years now. I'm also the academic director for the Kaplan Institute for Innovation and Technical Entrepreneurship. In that capacity, I oversee the academic activity that are in, sorry, I think I might be going. I don't know if I did a move. Okay. So yes, I oversee the interdisciplinary activities in STEM, but largely integrating the capabilities that we have across the entire campus. We bring together programs from business, psychology, science, engineering, and other areas as well, and design, of course. I've also served, in IEEE, for those of you who are familiar with the electrical engineering community. I serve in multiple capacities, which allows me an opportunity to see what other programs have been working on. So the ones I'm actually very proud of are the last 2 points. I've been involved with a Formula SAE race car competition, as I was walking in the door, I just saw a few students demonstrating a project outside. I didn't get a chance to talk to them. I'm hoping I do at some point. But it is an amazing vision that I have. I shouldn't say I have the vision. I just think the vision is amazing, but the vision I have, I truly feel, I love seeing students get passionate and excited. So the last two things, I will talk about it just a little bit as we go on. I've been working as the faculty advisor for Formula SAE competition and for the newly awarded EcoCar Challenge that just got awarded in April, which is a 4-year competition. So with that, next slide, please. So if one were to ask me why Illinois Tech, the first thing really is that we have identified Illinois Tech. We feel like we are at that cusp of identifying, of kind of bridging the gap between industry and academia. And we have a vision that actually wants to respond to the moment. Just like we just heard, we want to identify what the needs of the people are. Gone are the days when technology stood by itself. When you solved a problem and hoped somebody would need it someday. Now, we need to be facing what the community needs. We need to be talking about what the industry needs. We need to be thinking about our students, what they need, and tailor our programs such that they are all equipped for success. Next slide, please. So just to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit, you might not be familiar with a lot of these people, but you're definitely familiar with what they have done. On the very left is Marvin Camrus. He was actually a professor of electrical engineering in our department. He is the inventor of the magnetic tape. So if you have ever used a cassette tape, VHS, you name it, he's the person. The next person is Martin Cooper. He's an alum. He's still a part of our Illinois Tech community. And the inventor of the modern-day cell phone. A few of us are familiar with what we can do with one now. So he is the one who invented it. The next person is Ed Kaplan. He is actually the namesake institute that we have, Kaplan Institute, is named after him. He gave a very generous donation. He founded Zebra Technologies, which invented the barcode. So if you, well, once again, if you bought anything ever, you know what he's done. Rohit Prasad is a founder. He basically invented, or he was one of the inventors for Amazon Alexa. And Victor Sao is the co-founder for Linksys. So we do have a history, and these are just a few of the people over the course of the last few decades who have kind of set an expectation for the next generations to follow. They invented and they innovated when it was not the biggest thing, it was not the most popular thing. However, they set a course that we are now only hoping to follow. So, next please. So our vision really is to have all the students from our universities graduate with what we call entrepreneurial mindset. It's different from entrepreneurship. We want to give an opportunity for entrepreneurship, which is, as we all often associate, the idea of having a startup, for starting your own company. But we want to have a mindset, an attitude that goes well beyond what it means to just start a company or just go into a classroom. Next slide, please. So the Kaplan Institute, like I said, it's relatively new compared to the history of the university. The vision of Kaplan Institute really is to have a new generation of tech leadership. And we are talking about specifically about the Chicago landscape because we want to take pride in where we are, where we come from, what we want to accomplish. And basically what we mean is we want students that are more entrepreneurial, we want them to be more diverse, and we want them to be more community-minded. Like I said before as well, and such a wonderful vision that EELISA shares as well, is that you have to get to a place where people are your focus. So we really, what this means for a program is that we want to have a market focus. We want to always think about what impact we are going to have in the industry, what impact we are going to have in the community. We want to work very closely with the Bronzeville community. So if you have been to Chicago or to near IIT, you might notice that we are close to the south side. We are technically in the south side, but the community around us is a neighborhood that is currently undergoing a transformation. We want to be part of that transformation. We don't want to be technologists who interact with people across the globe, but forget who we are actually neighbors with. And of course, the last thing is commercialization. Our students have some wonderful ideas. We need to give them a platform, an opportunity for them to test, try, and most importantly, fail. We need to let them try their ideas to figure out what works, what doesn't, and we need to get them to be able to communicate those ideas effectively and clearly to their audiences, whether they are talking to their parents, whether they're talking to their neighbors, a company, or hopefully an investor. Next slide, please. So the Kaplan Institute really is, we take pride in being a bridge. We want to be the ones that build a bridge between disciplines and colleges. We want to have an exponential impact to our work. That is our true vision. We want to be a focal point of enabling Illinois Tech and Chicago as the catalyst that creates opportunities, responds to the needs of the moment. So very broadly, we can we break this down into a few sets of questions. So the first one is, how do we train our students to recognize an unmet need? We need to know how do we engage the industry, because you can have an idea, but if you don't have execution, it doesn't really end up anywhere. How can we enable collaborations between colleges within the university and other institutes? How do we balance the hyper-local focus of a city and, of course, scale that up to a truly global impact? How do we enhance community engagement? How can we bring in small businesses, city neighborhoods that are not directly technological, so to speak, but as a technical institute, how do we bring them alongside? How do we work with them? And of course, the last but not the least, by any means, how do we promote diversity? Diversity comes in many ways. Gender equality is just one of the most important ones. We have everything from ethnic diversity, gender diversity, basically skill set diversity. You want to have people, just because we are engineers, a lot of us here are engineers, scientists, doesn't mean we can do it all by ourselves. We have to have teams that are truly diverse, that truly bring together people from every aspect and every rung of the society. Next, please. So our ecosystem really is broadly defined into 4 key stakeholders. We have the industry partners, we have students, faculty, experts, and community partners. We cannot work without all 4 of them. We are basically looking at research to define unmet need. We want to collect market insights. We want to have, we don't know what the product requirements are, and then of course, go ahead and identify the stakeholders, build and test. That's really the model that we are trying to follow. So what we want is really a partnership of university, community, and the industry, and always the enabling component here is going to be our students. Next slide, please. So if we go on, so I wanted to lead off here and switch gears a little bit to the iPro program. Next slide, please. So iPro is an interprofessional project, and it's one of the the flagship program of the Kaplan Institute, where we want to provide an exemplary experience in making contributions as part of a high-performance, multidisciplinary team. We just heard about in the video as well about how important it is to look at that impact. So we want to have professional methods, and the president of IT also spoke about this, that we want to have a rigorous professional methods. That is a part of who we are. That is a part of what a faculty does. We want to make sure it is tied to an active effort. And this is actually from a charter that was set in 1995, which is when the iPro program itself was founded. Next slide, please. So, the left actually completely blended out. But one of the things that we wanted to identify was there is a piece on the very left, which is actually for freshmen, for first-year students. What we have recognized is that previously what we used to look at for a model that allowed students to be fourth-year students before you tried something is not as effective as you want it to be. We have to identify students really early in their careers. We need to give them an opportunity to test. Oftentimes, when students get to know too much, sometimes you are extra careful, which means you are very risk averse. You don't want to try too many things because you know what could go wrong. When you are younger, you are a little more confident because you feel and you believe that you can change the world. That is the attitude we do not want to let go. So there's actually, like I said, if you want to have this presentation, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. But there's actually, like I said, there's a freshman level component at the very beginning as well. So we want to actually introduce the iPro program, the interprofessional program, and the entrepreneurial mindset at every single year. and then lead to a culminating experience at the final year when they truly go out and try out different ideas as they launch into the industry. So we go from didactic learning all the way to the practical learning over the course of 4 years. Next slide, please. So the question really that comes down is, what should students truly be able to accomplish at the end of the semester? Whenever you take an iPro course, you need to be looking at, and I apologize, the gray on my laptop looked a lot better and more legible than this does. But like I said, if you do want the presentation, more than happy to share. These are our 4 learning objectives for our courses. We actually have defined this, the university defines this as a mandate for the courses. Every course is required and expected to follow these outcomes. We need to have a commitment for positive community change. We need to have critical and innovative thinking. We need to have professional and ethical collaboration. We need to have effective communication. These are all extremely important. Like I said before, you need to know how to fail. But what that means is you need to know what to do when you fail, because the idea always is you need to get up, brush it off, and try to do better. So it is extremely important. The last 2 pieces in terms of ethical collaboration is extremely valuable. As engineers, as scientists, we have a huge responsibility. The work we do impacts not 1, not 2, but hundreds of people at any given point. And as you might see from some of the recent accidents, you can call it, or some of the recent mishaps that we've had, engineers oftentimes tend to be the people who have to make the right call at the right time. Next slide, please. So if you're talking about the iPro goals, we equate that very closely to what we define as an entrepreneurial mindset. We need to be market focused, we need to have a practical conviction, and we need to have persuasive communication. Next slide, please. So if you look at what our iPro courses look like today, we actually have a kind of a broad bucket that we can define our courses under, with different threads that we define them under. The first one is actually called Industry and Community Labs. This structure, actually, we started on this only about 2 years back, where we had the vision of starting to streamline their efforts based on the challenge statement or the problem statement that was defined and how we are going about solving them. The industry and community labs really are led by the industry. They often define the project. They identify what the need of the hour is. And they help us craft a challenge statement that we then go ahead and pose to the students. The second one is a national competition. Like I said, that's the one I'm extremely passionate about, partly because I've been doing that for about 12, 13 years now. It involves students building teams. They look and function like a startup. You have a president, a vice president. I'll show you just a quick slide of what that looks like. But they work in a team, self-driven. They compete at the end of the semester or the end of the year in a lot of cases, and they are judged. That's how the industry works. Your technology either works or it doesn't. That's the expectation they have from themselves as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of the introduction to deep tech, this is actually defined by our faculty. So the first one was industry-led, the second one is student-led, the third one is faculty-led. So this is, if you have a research topic, you have funded grants, proposals that you want to bring undergraduate students. You want to engage them at an early stage. That's a very good track. You can bring in students as an electrical engineering faculty. I can bring in students from mechanical engineering or civil engineering to join my program, specifically to work on, in my case, transportation. And of course, the last one is entrepreneurship. That is a very important aspect of us. We want to identify ideas and topics that can then be taken forward. They can join companies as innovators. They can start their own company as an innovator. They can seek funding, and we also provide access to some VCs, startup funding, and such as also as they go. All of these topics, by the way, are all interdisciplinary. They are meant to be a melting pot of different disciplines across the campus. Next slide, please. So I leave this. I'm not going to kind of go too much into details in terms of what the faculty expectations are, but the difference between a conventional classroom and an iPro classroom is that a faculty here is seen as a coach. We are not here to lecture the students, because keep in mind, as faculty, at some point, we have to acknowledge that we don't have all the answers. We just don't. The technology, the market overview, and everything is changing very, very quickly. We can only hope to keep up. So we need to create the opportunity for finding the right mentors, finding the right collaborators. We need to reinforce our iPro practices. We need to educate our students on how they can think as a team. You cannot be a lone wolf. You cannot be the only person who does all of this work. And of course, you need to work with partners. Partners could mean companies, it could mean investors, it could mean faculty, other students, friends, colleagues. In some cases, they might interview their own family in order to understand. Some of the examples would be, we have some iPros that go into assistive technology, where they're trying to identify how people with disabilities could use technology to advance their quality of life. So those kind of topics are extremely valuable and important. Next slide, please. So one of the programs that we have introduced recently as part of our engaging other colleges within the university is the Kaplan Fellows Program. Some of you actually might be familiar with a design degree, basically going around the product design or something to that effect. We established a program called Kaplan Fellows Program, which allows students from our Institute of Design, which is very highly ranked in the nation, to engage with our students. They have a design thinking that oftentimes engineering we don't necessarily teach in our classrooms. Oftentimes we talk about engineering as somewhat prescriptive method. We know the equations, we know the formulas. If we use the method, we know the outcome. Unfortunately, life doesn't always work like that, because a need does not come with a formula. You need to know how to think. If the problem changes, we went from being in person to online, virtual. You had to innovate. Nobody was prepared for it. This was the worst pandemic we have seen, at least that I know of. So we need to know how to think creatively and outside the box. In cases like that, Institute of Design is an extremely valuable partner. So we engage them across multiple of these courses to help us teach that design thinking. Because once again, so we pair them with a faculty who is traditional instructor, so to speak, with a Kaplan Fellow. Next slide, please. So if you talk about leadership through student competitions, next slide, please. The question that we always ask for student engagement is, how do we know, we are all as faculty asking that question, how do we know if what we're teaching the students is actually taking? I mean, do they understand anything that we just taught them? An exam is a great way, but what if they're having a bad day? On the flip side, what if they're great writers? Tomorrow, are they going to be just as good in the industry? How can we create a platform that allows them to test their own knowledge? At the same time, if they don't know something, how do we make sure that they do? How do we train them? Sometimes as faculty, we think that if I teach them just the right way, they will get it. Well, sometimes you need peers. Then you need their friends to help them learn. Even as a student, I always worked in a group. It was always fun. I always learned a whole lot better. You need to create that opportunity for students. So we need to understand how we are preparing students to work in an industry where they need to ask their colleagues, their seniors, their juniors sometimes, so people who joined after them, how to solve certain problems. We cannot do it all by ourselves. Next slide, please. So the current experiential learning module that we all might be familiar with, the first one, of course, is that you can have senior design project, 4th year. You have undergraduate research. Students can take credits, work with the faculty. We have summer immersion programs. You can work with us. You can also do a not for credit in which you work in a lab because you want experience, and that's fantastic. All 3 of these models, excellent, very effective, and really do extremely well. However, as I said, they're all oftentimes very linear. They tend to focus on one discipline, and it allows you to engage students from one area. They work, shouldn't call them silos necessarily, but they do have some amount of isolation between each other. Next slide, please. So if you look at what the leadership and mentorships through student competitions bring to the table, this is what I find to be a little different from what we have historically done. Competitions have oftentimes been a student activity. I believe, and we are beginning to believe, that team competitions are actually have a clear metric for success. They have independent thinking. They teach students things like project management, time management, budget management, things that we do not teach in our classroom. A 1 semester long project is great, but once again, you are telling them what to do and how quickly to do it in. But if you're building a car, if you're building a robot, if you're building a brand new airplane, which we all, by the way, are actual competitions that we are participating in this year. We have hydraulic bicycles. Those kind of topics, the student has to know how long things take. When do they have to start? When do they get to finish? What if something goes wrong? 2019, we were just starting and COVID hit. Supply chain disruptions. Our PCBs wouldn't arrive on time. How do you handle that? So students have to make those critical decisions, which they will in just about 3 years from the time they started the program, right? So next slide, please. This is the model that I think is extremely effective, in my mind, is somewhat different from what we have historically seen. There is a strong element of connecting the industry through peer mentorship all the way down to the team members. Faculty has a very strong role to play. We are the bridge, we are the coach, we are the connecting point between the entire process. However, we are not the people who know all the answers. For example, I have a team that works on Formula SA race car competitions. We build race cars every year, we compete every year. However, I don't know everything about the race car. I'm still learning, 10 years in and I'm still learning. This year we just got awarded the Eco Car competition in which GM gives us a 2023 Cadillac Lyric. It's their first ever electric vehicle that they have launched, and 13 teams in the United States, in North America have been selected, and we are one of the teams to be selected. It's a 4-year competition. They convert a 2-wheel Lyric into a 4-wheel drive, and they also have to make it self-driving, autonomous, connected autonomous vehicle. Students will do that over 4 years. It is a fantastic competition which is sponsored by GM, US Department of Energy, and also is managed by Argonne National Labs. And of course, we get an actual Cadillac that students are going to tear apart, and we put it back together. And then we go to GM, and then we test it out. These opportunities are happening. So next slide, please. So this is an important one in my mind, because oftentimes the questions that we often get are, why should I care? I mean, we're a university, how does it matter? We are a faculty, how does it help me? So there are very clear values that we have for students, departments, university, and industry. At the university level, very simply put, it gives visibility. People know you, industry hires you, and for the industry, they want the best and the brightest. Of course, you want students to build stuff, because as many mistakes as they make at school, they make that fewer mistakes when they join your company. They know what not to do, well, a lot of times, not all the time though. So, but it does create that ability to know that something happened, something went wrong, and the industry is always extremely passionate. So anytime our students go for job interviews, this is the model that works the best in my mind, because what happens in these competitions is that they're judged by industry professionals, which means when they go to the competition, they go to the students and tell the students, whenever you have time, please come and talk to us. We would love to talk to you about what work you've been doing and hire you, hopefully. So the interview process is actually flipped. It's not the company interviewing the student. It's the student interviewing the company, because several companies want to hire them based on what they're seeing at the competition. It's a unique model that I feel works extremely well, and our students have been very, very successful here. Next slide, please. So I'm getting to the end of my talk here. In my mind, the strategy for engagement of students is actually, I shouldn't say straightforward, but it's somewhat simplistic if you think about it. We need to have a strategic engagement plan. We cannot hope students will start and have a dream of doing something. Actually, they do, but we had to find a way to engage them, to give them an opportunity. We need to have leadership development. Students love to think, they love to dream. We need to give them an opportunity to lead. That's what allows them to start implementing the ideas. We need to create an innovation sandbox. Like I said, they should be able to try and fail. Hopefully, a few of them will succeed. They will invent the barcode. They will invent the cell phone, right? So that's how we are going to go about. And of course, the last one is we need to encourage entrepreneurs. Some of these will go on to start big companies. As a university, that brings tremendous visibility, that brings tremendous pride to all of us. It is extremely important for us to launch them and create a platform. As a university, we need to create a platform that allows them to try out a brand new idea. So, next slide, please. So, our vision for STEM really is we work together. We had to break down silos. We need to fulfill our responsibility as faculty. We need to address issues of equitability, accessibility across all operations. We have to work in a team. At the end of it all, it really takes an entire village, as the saying goes. And in this case, we are the community that brings it all together. And we need to emphasize inclusivity. So if you think about what's going on, last slide, please. Oh, next slide, please. just to kind of give you a closing thought here. Right now, the World Economic Forum has said that university entrepreneurship has a very crucial role to play in resetting the foundations of economic and social systems for a more equitable, sustainable, and resilient future. And very simply put, I would just say STEM plus innovation combined with an entrepreneurial mindset equals impact. So I'm hoping that as educators, as faculty, as administrators, we take this responsibility seriously and we take pride in the work we do, because the impact that we see, we might not see it today, but like I said, somebody invents an Alexa, somebody starts a company that solves cancer tomorrow. I would love to be part of that journey, and I'm sure you would as well. So I'll just go into the last slide just to put my contact information up there on the slide and open it up for questions, please. With that, thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, these are some of the pictures of what we have done, but I'll be more than happy to answer questions. I don't know if I'm supposed to be taking questions now or if I could just... Oh, okay, can I? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we have a team here who developed a breast cancer kit. They are here. They will be presenting their project tomorrow also.
Wonderful.
They would love to meet you during the break.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
It was very nice to listen to you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I think we met once on Zoom. I'm Zeynep Erdem Bayezid, Academic Director at Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. So I've watched your presentation with delight. My question would be, everything shouldn't be so always positive. What has been the biggest challenge and how did you overcome that?
That's an excellent question. We are still finding out a lot of the challenges as we go. I mean, it's a fun game of whack-a-mole there. But in terms of the challenges, one of the things at a technical university often tends to be the desire or the ability to define this entire problem on your own. The silo, in my mind, is the biggest challenge. As an engineer, we tend to believe that if I solve my engineering problem, everybody will love it. I think that idea is deeply flawed. We need to start with the end user. We cannot ignore the fact of the practicality of it all. We cannot talk about a concept like, for example, wireless charging and not think about what impact, if any, it could have on humans. So that is perhaps the biggest challenge. It's a historical mindset as well, because we have all done this for about a century. Universities have been in existence, and this idea worked for a long time, where you could kind of innovate yourself. But the thing is, the entire trajectory has changed. What the industry is looking for is different. What the community is looking for is different. And that changing of your thought process, it is surprisingly difficult, just because we tend to go back to our old ways whenever we can. That's our comfort space. That's one. Another one basically is, of course, is identifying resources. It's great to talk about the idea of providing startup funding. Not every university has the resources. You have to find the right connection to a foundation, possibly to donors, who provide you with the resources. Some of the major issues we are also looking at are things like intellectual property. How can we get our students to own what they create? So in our case, we have Illinois Tech does not own any of the patents that students create, because we see our students as our clients, so to speak. So they own, because they are paying tuition, they own their own IP, which means they can launch their own company. But if a faculty gets involved, now that gets a little muddy, because the faculty is an employee of the university. So there are some small details there which can have significant impact, but the biggest one in my mind is the desire to work in a place that you know that you can solve. If it's a problem you can solve, that's I think is the major obstacle in everything that we're doing. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Professor Krishnamurti. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoy the rest of the program. We will now adjourn for a coffee break, which will be followed by the parallel session, and also we can continue to question and answer session at the break. Thank you.
Dear Laura, by the time you read this, it will be the year 2030. A year in which all people have equal opportunities, access to food, clean water and energy. We are all healthy and thousands of species on our planet are saved from extinction. That is what some grown-ups say. But today, almost 10 years apart, I wonder how we can accomplish that. My mom says there is a good chance to make it happen. If we all learn how to take the green path to a more sustainable way of living. If we embrace the know-how of experts, students, teachers, and society, and we connect it to real people's needs. If we mix disciplines, people, and ideas, we design technology and combine resources to solve challenges with love and creativity. If people go beyond borders to learn and work in cooperation with others, celebrating diversity and inclusiveness. My mom is a scientist and says
All these transformations have started, and I want to be part of it. That is why I will study to become an engineer in 2030. An EELISA engineer.
Herkese selam, ben Sema Nur Arpacı.
Ben de Asya Coşkun.
Okulumuzun yolda EELISA konsorsiyumu projesiyle Avrupa Parlamentosu'na gitmek üzere havalimanına geldik. Uçağımız 2 saat içerisinde kalkıyor ama biz çoktan bütün valizlerimizi, bütün belgelerimizi halledip bekliyoruz.
2 gün sürecek bu etkinlikte parlamentoda European Student Assembly ile beraber Avrupa Birliği'nin birkaç politikasını tartışacağız. Bize şans dileyin.
by the time you read this, it will be the year 2030. A year in which all people have equal opportunities, access to food, clean water and energy. We are all healthy and thousands of species on our planet are saved from extinction. That is what some grown-ups say. But today, almost 10 years apart, I wonder how we can accomplish that. My mom says there is a good chance to make it happen. If we all learn how to take the green path to a more sustainable way of living. If we embrace the know-how of experts, students, teachers, and society, and we connect it to real people's needs. If we mix disciplines, people, and ideas, we design technology and combine resources to solve challenges with love and creativity. If people go beyond borders to learn and work in cooperation with others, celebrating diversity and inclusiveness. My mom is a scientist and says
all these transformations have started, and I want to be part of it. That is why I will study to become an engineer in 2030. An EELISA engineer.
Herkese selam, ben Sema Nur Arpacı.
Ben de Asya Coşkun.
Okulumuzun yolda EELISA konsorsiyumu projesiyle Avrupa Parlamentosu'na gitmek üzere havalimanına geldik. Uçağımız 2 saat içerisinde kalkıyor ama biz çoktan bütün valizlerimizi, bütün belgelerimizi halledip bekliyoruz.
2 gün sürecek bu etkinlikte parlamentoda European Student Assembly ile beraber Avrupa Birliği'nin birkaç politikasını tartışacağız. Bize şans dileyin.
Dear Laura, by the time you read this, it will be the year 2030. A year in which all people have equal opportunities, access to food, clean water and energy. We are all healthy and thousands of species on our planet are saved from extinction. That is what some grown-ups say. But today, almost 10 years apart, I wonder how we can accomplish that. My mom says there is a good chance to make it happen. If we all learn how to take the green path to a more sustainable way of living. If we embrace the know-how of experts, students, teachers, and society, and we connect it to real people's needs. If we mix disciplines, people, and ideas, we design technology and combine resources to solve challenges with love and creativity. If people go beyond borders to learn and work in cooperation with others, celebrating diversity and inclusiveness. My mom is a scientist and says
all these transformations have started, and I want to be part of it. That is why I will study to become an engineer in 2030. An EELISA engineer.
Herkese selam, ben Sema Nur Arpacı.
Ben de Asya Coşkun.
Okulumuzun yolda EELISA konsorsiyumu projesiyle Avrupa Parlamentosu'na gitmek üzere havalimanına geldik. Uçağımız 2 saat içerisinde kalkıyor ama biz çoktan bütün valizlerimizi, bütün belgelerimizi halledip bekliyoruz.
2 gün sürecek bu etkinlikte parlamentoda European Student Assembly ile beraber Avrupa Birliği'nin birkaç politikasını tartışacağız. Bize şans dileyin.
Dear Laura, by the time you read this, it will be the year 2030. A year in which all people have equal opportunities, access to food, clean water and energy. We are all healthy and thousands of species on our planet are saved from extinction. That is what some grown-ups say. But today, almost 10 years apart, I wonder how we can accomplish that. My mom says there is a good chance to make it happen. If we all learn how to take the green path to a more sustainable way of living. If we embrace the know-how of experts, students, teachers, and society, and we connect it to real people's needs. If we mix disciplines, people, and ideas, we design technology and combine resources to solve challenges with love and creativity. If people go beyond borders to learn and work in cooperation with others, celebrating diversity and inclusiveness. My mom is a scientist and says
all these transformations have started, and I want to be part of it. That is why I will study to become an engineer in 2030. An EELISA engineer.
Herkese selam, ben Sema Nur Arpacı.
Ben de Asya Coşkun.
Okulumuzun EELISA EELISA konsorsiyum projesiyle Avrupa Parlamentosu'na gitmek üzere havalimanına geldik. Uçağımız 2 saat içerisinde kalkıyor ama biz çoktan bütün valizlerimizi, bütün belgelerimizi halledip bekliyoruz.
2 gün sürecek bu etkinlikte parlamentoda European Student Assembly ile beraber Avrupa Birliği'nin birkaç politikasını tartışacağız. Bize şans dileyin.
Welcome back after the coffee break. We are now starting the RBL Good Practices section. After the inspiring talk by Krishnamurti, Professor Krishnamurti, we are now going to have a new series of speeches about new ways of learning. So I'm going to invite the first speaker of the section, Shule Itir Satoglu, please. She's going to tell us about research-based learning through the undergraduate engineering design projects. Thank you, Shule. You have 15 minutes.
Dear guests, I would like to welcome you to Istanbul Technical University. I'm a faculty member of Industrial Engineering Department of Istanbul Technical University, and I'm also Vice Rector of Student Affairs. So today I will try to tell you about our practices in engineering design projects. As you know, Istanbul Technical University is basically, or commonly, an engineering and architecture and fundamental sciences university, but basically most of our undergrad and grad programs are oriented, focused on engineering and architecture mostly, but we also have conservatory and fundamental sciences departments. So I want to quickly tell you about the concept of research-based learning, RBL. Research-based learning is the interconnection of between the learning and application. It's actually a methodology or a learning environment that is designed around some experiments, projects, inquiries, or other means in order to stimulate students to make research and conduct their own experiments. Therefore, they make some effort by experimentation, by making research, like literature review, or by designing an experiment and making an experiment and conducting some experimental activities or design activities. This is also called, RBL is also called a teaching research nexus. Actually, RBL is a specifically integrated methodology of learning and research designed for students to have their on-hand learning experiences. So we can say that this kind of learning is more autonomous for the students. They have the responsibility of learning actually. So the instructor teaches in class in theoretical courses, but at the same time, the student is responsible to make some design and project and experimental activities to learn the outcomes or to acquire the outcomes. By the way, the learning is more autonomous for the students, but it's guided by the instructors and academicians. So the role of the academician or instructor is not only lecturing, but also mostly, more commonly, guiding the students in this learning experience. So the advantage is, one of them is stronger student engagement. Students are more actively participating in this process, and it boosts or enhances the learning performance in terms of knowledge acquisition and experience. They also earn or acquire the skills to make the independent research easily. So the students acquire the skills for independent research. There are several research skills, but some of them are like analyzing data, conducting research, communicating results, and so on. These are only few of them. So especially in science and engineering education, we need to identify a student or group of students identifies a research problem. They search the literature and conduct a literature review. They generate research questions. They determine a research method, and they set up the studies, collect input data if the data is needed, but in most of the design studies, data, of course, and experimental studies data is needed. Perform experiments, collect output data, analyze the output, and interpret findings, and report the findings orally and in written form in terms of posters and papers, etc. So what we are doing in ITU? In graduate education especially, as you know, during the graduate studies, some methodological or conceptual novelty is aimed. Therefore, graduate studies are naturally complying with the research-based learning, because the students, either master students or a PhD student, must conduct a research. We have some, in ITU, we have some guided search studies or courses. Of course, we have thesis studies, thesis research studies. We have seminar courses based on the topic studied. The students give some seminars about their research. This is oral communication. So they present their findings and so on. And especially in ITU, some scientific conference papers and presentations are required for a master's degree, to earn a master's degree at ITU. But in the same time, in PhD, at least one scientific paper, that is SCI indexed, Science Citation Index, in a good journal, I mean, journal of high reputation, they have to publish at least one scientific paper to complete the PhD studies at ITU. Therefore, that's what I'm trying to say. In ITU, of course, in graduate studies by nature, all of the studies are research-based. We conduct some like master thesis project research poster days. These are some snapshots from online sessions. Many faculty members and students come together and they discuss on the poster of a student's research study. This is basically from a master study. The introduction, methods and results, conclusion, and so on. These were online, actually. So that's a discussion environment. Especially also in doctoral level, we have some, we conduct some poster days like colloquium for discussing those research studies and outcome. That provides a discussion environment, of course. In addition, in our undergraduate programs, we also conduct practices of research-based learning, especially in architecture, let me say. First, I will tell you about architecture undergrad programs. It is NAAB accredited, or let me say international licensed. So our architecture program is recognized by NAAB. So NAAB has some student learning outcomes and objectives. These are also emphasizing the sustainable development goals as well as research-based learning. So all of our students, since our program is accredited, all of our students are assessed in terms of satisfying these student outcomes. Some of them are health, safety, welfare in the built environment. So the students must have earned the skills and knowledge about good practices of profession in health, safety, welfare in built environment. They must also have good practices for professional practice. professional ethics, compliance with regulatory requirements, and so on. Especially in student outcome 1, welfare, health, safety, and welfare is important, so it is associated with the SDGs. So also in our undergrad program, in the third outcome, understand the fundamental principles of life safety. That's an important outcome, so students must also learn or must acquire that outcome as well. And also they must have a technical knowledge as an outcome. So they must understand the emerging systems, technologies, and economics, performance objectives, and so on. So also this SC5 design synthesis, it is more research-based learning focused. The students must be able to make an accessible design, consideration of measurable environment impacts of their design decisions. Let me say, all of the undergrad students in our Faculty of Architecture perform a diploma project. So in those diploma projects, these outcomes are strongly assessed, whether or not those outcomes are achieved by the students. So one of the other important outcome is the environmental control system, life safety system, and measurable outcomes of the building performance. So let me say, these were the student outcomes, but in architecture, our undergrad program, we also have some program criteria, especially research and innovation, learning and teaching culture. These are RBL-oriented outcomes. So the program complies with those outcomes, research and innovation in the discipline, and also learning and teaching culture. Besides ecological knowledge and responsibility, social equity and inclusion is also, these are all related with sustainable development goals. So social equity, ecological issues are reflected in the architectural programs. So I'm going faster. We conduct some virtual fair of diploma projects. And from the Unity platform, they broadcast the projects, actually, of architecture, landscape architecture, regional planning projects, and so on. So all sustainable principles, sustainability principles are reflected. So some of the, for an architecture diploma project, also another architecture, industrial design diploma project. It is, for example, autonomous emergency rescue equipment dispenser vehicle for hard-to-reach disaster zone. These are not trivial projects, by the way. These are hard-working, maybe they spend so much effort to complete the project, so landscape architecture and so on. What about engineering design projects? It is compulsory for all undergrad students. We give 8 to 9 ECTS. Some prerequisite courses apply. We have 25 ABET accredited undergrad programs. And in our ABET, especially, the red outcomes are RBL outcomes, actually. So ability to identify, formulate, solve engineering design engineering problems by applying principles of engineering science, etc. Ability to develop, conduct experimentation, and analyze and interpret data and use engineering judgment to draw conclusions, and ability to acquire, apply new knowledge as needed. These are RBL outcomes, so all our ABET accredited undergrad programs must satisfy those RBL outcomes, and they assess the students for the RBL outcomes. Besides, we have outcomes related with sustainable development goals in ABET, ability to apply engineering design related with public health, safety, welfare, global culture, social, environmental, and economic factors. And the third outcome also is related with the SDGs. So what are we going to do next, actually? We know that to a certain extent we apply, in undergrad level, we apply some research-based learning principles, but we know that we have some more theoretical courses. We must more commonly apply those RBL practices through the courses, especially for more theoretical oriented courses. We must apply RBL. So we must encourage our lecturers and academicians. So also we are going to associate our undergrad engineering design projects with the sustainable development goals. We don't formally assess the outcomes, SDGs, in our engineering design projects, but we are planning to assess our students' projects in terms of ability to satisfy the sustainable development goals in the future, because we know that ELISA, as a partner of ELISA, we are emphasizing the importance of SDG. That's all of my presentation.
Thank you. We will have a dedicated section at the end of the talks for question and answers. So I ask the speaker just to stay here with us, so that at the end I will invite you to join us on the stage. And now I will ask to Professor Pinto to give his speech. He's going to present us cases of inquiry-based and contextualized STEM education for first-year engineering students. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning to everybody, and many thanks to the Istanbul Technical University for this organization. And as it is said, I will speak about a few cases about how to use this kind of learning, the research-based learning in a class, in the classroom of first year in engineering students with the subject of chemistry. After a short introduction, I will speak about a few cases, among others that we have used in the last few years. And finally, I will say a few outcomes that we have obtained with the study of this kind of learning. No? Yes, a few ideas. Often engineering students are insufficiently interested by chemistry. An interesting thing that, question that we wanted with these experiences is that students can do the experiments at home, for example, at the kitchen of home, but uninteresting research. No? And our goals are, firstly, to facilitate the acquisition of concepts. We love that students learn things of chemistry, of physics, and so on. Also, the collaboration in the acquisition of several competencies, as teamwork, for example, and to bring the state-of-the-art research outcomes into the classroom. These are our goals, and our challenge are to improve the motivation, not only from students, but also for us as teachers, because we must prepare new cases every year. Also, we want to encourage critical thinking and creative skills in students and promote the science literacy and the social responsibility in our students. What are the bridges for that? The use of several teaching tools, for example, science, technology, society tools, active learning, and inquiry-based science education. Especially as they are students for first year, we use the inquiry-guided method. And also, as I said, to allow students to come face to face with real life challenges. These are the characteristics of the cases when you use with a student. This is an activity apart from the typical course, and it uses only a short time in the class because students must work at homework by teams. Yes, this is the first case. For example, this I use it usually the first day of the class. When I know by first time my students, I say to them a question. Where will melt before an ice cube, in water or in saturated salt water? They must think a minute, and I say to them, what is your answer? Because there are only 4 possibilities. In water with salt, practically equal, or I don't know. After a minute, we check the answers, and I say that they must work in groups of 3. And I repeat the answer once they have worked by teams. And I said, as there are different answers, what is the correct? And they must discuss that we can do this experiment at home. Then I give to them a few days to do the experiments at home. And they change the answer, no? Contrarily to most people, students and teachers, the answer is the opposite that we think generally. Then they must work, and the phenomenon is due to the to difference in densities in this medium or in this medium. Because with water, the water that melts go to the bottom, and we can visualize the currents with a drop of food colorant. You add a drop of food colorant, and you see the convection currents, and here not. It's for that is faster the phenomenon here. After they do experiments, they can do another question, for example, to measure the temperature at the surface and at the bottom in the 2 medium. And they check why is the difference. Also, there are other interesting questions around this phenomenon. For example, why this ice move and here not? Because here there are currents and here there is not. And also, is the same with sugar or with salt? Yes, because it is a problem of densities. Other question that they can check, for example, at home, it's very difficult to obtain a perfect transparent ice. And other things. And if you add an ice in your cooking oil at home or in ethanol, what is the behavior? No? And this is important, yes. For example, if students understand that, they can understand a few, for example, the thermohaline circulation, so important for the climate in the world. And also, for example, why the microplastic are transported to some zones at the bottom of the sea. Then, with a simple experiment, we can understand a lot of things. And also, we introduce experimental research that is done by colleagues of my department. They are studying models for simulate the formation of ice in the moons of Jupiter, because there are special conditions of temperature and pressure. And then we use, at the end of this activity, the program that has developed our colleagues, but at the opposite, not for the formation of ice by the fusion, and we find the same behavior. Then they can see that a simple experiment that you can make at the kitchen at home is very important to understand, for example, the composition of any zones of the moons of Jupiter. Only to mention, because we have no time, but other examples, we have worked with students about the thermodynamics and properties and applications of this container that is very, very typical in Spain hundreds of years ago. In Spanish we said botijo, and in English is earthenware pitcher with a spoon and handle. It allows to drink a cold water in summer because the water inside goes to the pores and evaporate. And with the evaporation, the heat of evaporation of water causes the cooling of the water. This is the same philosophy that a Nigerian teacher has applied recently in Africa. And this pot-in-pot, that is the same behavior, but in this case, two pots, and between them there are wet sand. Because of the evaporation, there is cold here, and the foods can preserve a few days. Thanks to this research, the girls of Thertans village of Africa could go to school because they can take the food and maintain it a few days, not all the day bending the food. And the explanation is the same that a popular scientific toy that is the drinking bird is the same. The evaporation of water causes the cool difference of temperature and so on, no? Okay, then we study with this kind of tools a lot of concepts from physics, technology, chemistry, geology, mathematics, biology, and sociology also. This is a good example of STEAM, because we have also the art of ceramic, not? And we can check a lot of measures at the laboratory and make different, for example, our students can manufacture the pot-in-pot simply, and to check how the foods are preserved at home, for example, no? There are equations very difficult to first-year students, but we show them to show that they must learn a lot of physics and mathematics as engineers. These are the equations with complicated solutions by mathematics, and this is examples of my students. How is the difference, for example, in carrot, preserved in the pot-in-pot or out the pot-in-pot? It is object of research. For example, there are researches that investigate about the geometry of the container. Also, there are another teachers that investigate and the importance of climate, because for this kind of dispositive, you need a dry and hot climate. Then it is not typical at the world. It's only typical specifically of the Mediterranean area. It's for that, for example, English people don't know what is a botijo. They didn't need in the past, no? And very quickly, because we haven't time, but only to show you another kinds of examples. For example, this is an application that is the opposite of the previous example. Before, the evaporation of water decreased the temperature. But, for example, in the boiler at home, we use, in Spain, for example, natural gas, and the combustion gives carbon dioxide and water. Water, vapor, gas. But if you obtain condensing water, you have more energy. And our students by inquiry-wide learning, looking for what is the natural gas. They do a simple model, they study questions, and they obtain that if we use at home condensing boilers, we save at 10% of natural gas and 10% less also of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, not? Very important, for example, for the situation of war now in Europe with the problem of the natural gas, no? Then quickly, this is only to show you that it is not only a curiosity. Students must work, and for example, another example, with the advertisement of cars, our students can explain what is the relationship between the emissions of CO2 and the consumption of petrol. Another experiment, this is another one, this is a design of one of my students, because here we study how certain chemical reactions and dissolution process of salts can give energy to heat a drink. Important, for example, for excursion, no? Then we check all the properties of these containers, we check the temperature, and so on, no? Okay, this is our last case. I am working now with it. I am working with my students to perform this experiment, this simple experiment, to calculate the heat of combustion of nuts. And they can compare it with the information given at the product. And this is a double interesting for me because I also teach to future secondary educative teachers. Then what I learn with my teachers in engineering, I also teach to future teachers. Okay, the point of view of students is that this kind of tools gives to us, give to them an opportunity to know why is useful the chemistry for them. And thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. Now I invite Professor Farr and Professor Curcio from FAU to give their speech about research-based learning as a didactical concept. I will give you 2 minutes.
So, dear colleagues, hello. I'm Michael Curcio. I'm the director of the Center for Higher Education at the University of Erlangen-Nuremberg. I will say some words about that later.
Yes, and my name is Uwe Farr.
Okay. We are both from the same institution. Okay. Schauen wir mal. Wo muss ich hin? Andi, halt, warte mal. Wie geht es weiter? Kannst du? Scheiße. Okay. Short overview about what we have here today. First of all, I want to give you a short introduction to the context in which we are working, because we are not engineers. And then we try to introduce the concept of research-based learning as we understand that. And then we have an example, a good practice example, and we have some conclusions after that. Okay. Okay. The context in which we are working is we are the Center for Higher Education, and our task is to support the teachers or the teaching staff of our university to improve their own teaching. And we do that with further training, with didactical training. We do that with didactical coaching and consulting, and also supporting teaching projects and to facilitate the exchange among each other. Teachers came together with us and they can learn from each other. And in this way, we came into contact with teachers who practice research-based learning, and we want to show you an example of these.
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to give you, first of all, a short impression of our concept of research-based learning, which is quite similar to, I think, to yours. This one is a brochure was produced 50 years ago, and because we have quite a long tradition of research-based learning in Germany, it's over 200 years. Maybe some of you heard of Humboldt and others, which always established a concept which is quite similar. 50 years ago, there were some researchers who said, oh, okay, we have to go back to this concept and we have to develop and to strengthen the research-based learning in our university because students don't do enough research. So Ludwig Huber, he was one of the most important educationists in this context, and he wrote at the end of his life, together with his colleague Gabriele Reinmann, a very important book about the topic. So this is our concept we use, and as you can see there, in accordance with the international literature, we use three different concepts, and we use some terminological distinctions because there is quite a lot of learning at universities about research. There is a lot of learning for research, but there is only, or there's not so much learning through research. So the main point here is learning through research, and there are some difficulties and some didactical obstacles to that. So if we look into the brochure I've already showed to you, you can see this, this circle of research. It's actually written in German, but I think everybody of you knows the circle of research and the different outcomes and learning goals which are associated with this context. So if we just go back for a second, the main point here is that students should independently work and they just get some help from their professors and teachers to do their research, and they should develop their own questions, develop their own researches, and publish their results if possible. So let me give you just a short example of one of the courses which are given at the FIU. It's the Chair for Open Source Software, which our professor uses a quite complex concept for this, and you will see that the different kinds of research-based learning which we've seen in the last slide are used here. Because there is a course, there's a project, there's a learning platform used for it, there are a lot of exercises, and there are a lot of assignments used here. So as you can see here, there is a lecture which everybody has to take part, and there is a project where only some of the students do take part, and we will see the reasons shortly in a minute. So these are just the topics which are used in, or which are lectured about, and as you can see, it's all very different kinds of research methodology. So, but this part is really a lecture. It's a more traditional part of it, and the second part, the students can take part in. They don't have to, but they can take part, but only some of them do take part, is to work in a project where they can work on their own research papers. And they work together with mostly with people who are writing on their thesis at the chair. So they learn quite a lot about the research process. But as you can see, it's only a part of them. What are the problems, or what are the obstacles? You need a lot of intensive supervision of the students. And so you need a lot of manpower to do all the work. And so this is sometimes a kind of obstacle to scale this measure, just as everybody would like to, but it's but it is already done. So as you can see, it's a difficulty here to scale for large student groups. So let us come already to some conclusions. We always give lectures about the concepts for our teachers and the teaching staff. And quite often they say, oh, what we are doing is already research-based learning. And we say, yes, you quite often do some learning for research and about research, but you don't, much less you do learning through research. So what you should do is more learning through research. So quite often the exams are following more the model, and students sometimes need more help, but as we have seen, it's partly a little bit a problem, and so they need more help. As we could see in our discussions with our staff, we have learned that maybe we should, in research-based learning, should be integrated earlier in the study, because students should be used to this kind of studying quite from the first semester, as we have already heard. And we have some initiatives that try to develop research-based learning at our universities. So there's also some more funding through this so-called Innovationsfonds, which helps teaching staff who try to establish research-based learning with financial funding. So we try to promote the concept even from more centrally, and our next speaker will have some more information, I think, about this, because he's also from the same university. So thank you very much for your attention. I think I'm very good in time.
Thank you. Now it's time for Kim Vanselow, again from FAU. He will talk us about the integration of research-based learning in the German higher education system.
Hello everybody, can you hear me? That's fine. So thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Kim Vanselow. I'm from FAU, like the previous speakers, and there I'm coordinator for degree program development. So this means I'm not an engineer, but I'm the one with a broad overview about what's going on in degree program development at FAU. And you might recognize that my title changed a bit from what is in the program, because my aim is not to tell you what research-based learning is, but that we should be aware that there are different understandings, and we should work towards a joint understanding of research-based learning. This is my aim. And you can see this here. different terms that might be under the umbrella of research-based learning. You can see it here. And one thing is when different words are used for the same things, or the same words are used for different things, sometimes confusion is the result. Yeah? And in an international program like ELISA, it is very important to get to the same understanding so that we can exchange our experience on research-based learning, that we know that we talk about the same, and so that we can proceed further to improve our modules that might sometime be then integrated to ELISA. We already heard about these three categories. There are several terms that have to do with research-based learning, and Huber and Reinmann, they tried, or they found out that you can put all these terms into three categories. We learned already about learning about research, learning for research, and learning through research. Yeah, and we should be aware that different authors use different terms for these three categories. For example, Healy and Jenkins, they used research-based learning only for this category, learning through research. Huber, for example, he used forschungsbasiert, which can be translated as research-based learning, in the category learning about research. And here, in learning through research, he used the word forschend, which means doing research. So what I want to do here is just making them aware that there are different categories and different terms, and we should be aware about what we mean. We already saw this in the previous presentation, this cycle of Kolb. I quickly go through it. Usually you have the orientation if you're doing research, then you identify a scientific problem, yeah? Then you compile information on this problem, yeah? You formulate hypotheses. Then you need to know about the methods that you apply to find some solutions, and you draft the research design. You draft the research design, you implement your research, and then later on you present it to the audience, to the public. You also need to evaluate it. And maybe you find out something doesn't work very well or something like that, or you have to know what worked well or what didn't work well. This means you do reflective observations to improve your project, your product, whatever. And here you see the three categories that we just saw in the table. And not all these categories are in each bubble. So some bubbles, for example, identification of a scientific problem, you can only do this by doing learning through research. But my question now is, are we already in research-based learning if we only have some of these bubbles checked, or do we need to check all these bubbles? This is the question I have to you. Maybe we should find an answer. I don't give you an answer, I just pose this question. Okay, and now let's go to FAU's degree programs. We have bachelor's degree programs, we have master's degree programs, and of course you also can do a PhD at our university. And I want to start with a bachelor degree program. Usually our bachelor degree programs, they are basic degree programs. In your university, I think this is the same. Yeah? And our aim is equipping the students with basic academic and professional skills, with the aim to qualify the students for a profession. So we leave university after they receive their bachelor's degree. Or we want to qualify the students for a further master's degree. Sometimes after bachelor's they go to a profession and then they come back and do a master's. Yeah, that is the aim of our bachelor's degrees. Yeah? And so, keeping this in mind, the research-based learning types that we have in the bachelor's programs, they usually belong to learning about research and learning for research, but rarely to learning through research. Maybe sometimes in the bachelor's thesis you do something like learning through research, but usually you only have these boxes checked. Usually you don't identify the scientific problem on your own. Usually you rarely draft your own research design and you don't implement research, but usually you base your bachelor's thesis on knowledge that is already existing. Yeah, you compile information through literature-based research. But you don't check all these bubbles usually in the bachelor's programs. Here's an example, a module example. The module is called Data Collection Methods. It's from our Bachelor of Science program in International Business Studies. And we have many such modules in different degree programs. And it's a rather small module with 5 ECTS over 1 semester. Yeah, and here the students will get presented an overview on methods, on research. Yeah? Someone who does research presents research to the students. So they don't do own research, but we come in touch somehow with research. Yeah? And so the students will gain an overview of methods that you need to do research. Yeah? They have some experiences in exercises with carrying out research methods. Yeah? And they get prepared to write a thesis and maybe later to do own research and do learning through research. Yeah, but this module only checks maybe these 4 bubbles. It's not the full cycle. And this is true for many of our bachelor's modules or modules in bachelor degree programs. Okay, let's go further to master's degree programs. There the aim is changing. Here we want to equip the students with advanced academic skills, and of course with the competence to conduct research. So we are no researchers yet, but our aim is that we become good researchers. And also here, most modules, they belong to learning about research category and to learning for research category. But here in some cases, the students already do learning through research. In the master's thesis, of course, but also in some more practical modules. So you can check the same bubbles like in the bachelor's program, but also maybe sometimes we draft their own research in modules on the master's thesis. We also implement some research. Rarely they identify own scientific problems on their own. Yeah, I don't check this bubble here. Maybe you can sometimes check it with a very small check. Okay, 2 examples. One is the module Drug Discovery from our Masters of Science program in Molecular Science. It's a very large module, 30 ECTS. It goes over 1 year, 2 semesters. And it consists of several kinds of seminar, of a laboratory course, also of a research project. And they have also a seminar journal club where we discuss state-of-the-art knowledge in this drug discovery science. And the aim is that the students, that they understand basic and advanced principles here in medical, chemical, and molecular biological and computer chemistry-based applications, always with the aim to conduct research in modern drug design. And they utilize also these methods, yeah? And they do experimental techniques like we already saw in previous talks. Yeah? And the aim is also to apply modern stimulation techniques. And one very important aim, the students should interpret and critically summarize also these results, yeah, that come out if they do their experiments. So we judge and discuss also in oral form the results, and this means in the end you can check nearly all these boxes. Yeah, you do also reflection afterwards. Maybe we don't identify the problem on their own. Now, sometimes I'm not so sure, and this is why I didn't check it. This is my own interpretation. A last example. This is the AMOS project. AMOS stands for Agile Methods and Open Source Software. It's rather small for a bachelor's module, master's module. It's rather small. 10 ECTS points. It's in one semester. So yeah, for one semester it's rather big, but it's only for 6 months this course, and it teaches agile methods. This means this is a software product design where you have a short planning phase. Maybe some of you know better than me. You have a short planning phase and you go into application of your software product, and then you iteratively improve your product by getting feedback from the user. And you extend your software product iteratively by the feedback of the user. And this is done here in this module, and the students, they work in groups, in small groups, and the groups are divided into the software owners and into the software developers. Yeah? And the ideas, they come from outside universities, not from the professor, but from the industry outside university. They provide the ideas, and then the students, yeah, they take the roles, one as the owners who want to develop this, and one as the developers. And so the students, they learn about the software product in a very practical way, and they have hands-on experience on these projects. Yeah, and so here you can check these bubbles. They get into a deep detail, yeah, in all these steps of this whole cycle. Okay, let me come to my last slide. I'm changing to PhD now. PhD students. It's difficult to talk about PhD students in Germany because 80% of all PhD students, they choose the traditional way in Germany. And maybe this is different from how PhD students work at your university. I don't know. I just present how it goes in Germany. Only 20% they have a structured path. And 80%, you can't call them PhD students. They are research associates. They get a contract at university, and they are young researchers. And they are doing the research. Yeah, usually, we only get a part-time job. Sometimes we also have to carry out their research during the free time, not during the project time they are engaged in. And sometimes we are also doing teaching and have administrative duties. And this is maybe different from how being a PhD student works at your universities. Yeah, but you have to keep this in mind if we talk about research-based learning for PhD students, yeah, because we are the partner who does it this way. But these researchers, they can check the whole cycle and do in real research. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much to all the speakers for being perfectly in time. Now I'm going to ask you to share the stage with me. So I ask all the speakers to sit here with me so we can start our question and answer section. There is also a dedicated YouTube channel, and I want to tell people that are following us on YouTube that I'm ready to take your questions if you have any. For the time being, there are no questions from people online.
solid state. And I say, bravo, you have discovered the decreasing of the fusion point of the water, as in your car you have an anti-fridge liquid, no? If these students don't study that, they don't understand. But I must say that as teacher, I give opportunities to my students, but not all the students want to work. There are a lot of students very lazy. For example, I remember a time that when they sent to me the report, the first one, a person said to me, I haven't the answer because I did, but when all ices were solid, I went to the toilet and when I returned it, all was liquid. It's an excuse of this student, no? Then I think that as teachers, we must give a lot of opportunities and all our help to students. But each person is free to work or not to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just ask to the audience if you have any questions. Yes, please.
I would have two questions. The first is, I'm not addressing anybody, just open to all of you. Do you think the concept of research-based learning, which we already heard, can be understood quite differently, is especially important for the engineering sciences, or is it important for all sciences, or what are differences between the different disciplines we have? That would be the first question. And the second one is about, do we actively need to reflect about research-based learning, or is it so inherent in what we are doing anyway that we don't need to reflect on it, because it seems to be usual things we are doing in normal practices. So what makes the topic so special that we need to talk about it?
Thank you very much. Very interesting question. Is anybody that would like to start replying to the first question, maybe?
I believe that in basic sciences and engineering, we could make some experimentation and make a design, and it is more convenient to apply research-based learning. But I think that in some social sciences, for example, it's hard to make an experimentation. This is my point of view, but I don't know. I believe that from the engineering and sciences, it may be more easier. But I'm an engineer, therefore this is my point of view. I'm not very I don't know very well social sciences, but I think that it may be more possible to apply more commonly RBL. But by the way, we have some difficulties, I believe, because for many academic people, it is easier to, give theoretical lectures. But experimentation within the class or within a lab requires more time and effort. For example, to make an experiment in thermodynamics in the lab and explaining in the lab those concepts rather than, teaching in a theoretical manner. It requires more effort, I think. I think that's the challenge from my point of view. I believe that. This is applicable for engineering and as well as other basic sciences. I must keep it short. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kim, maybe you want to say something? I've seen you. Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm not an engineer. I'm a geographer, and I think research-based learning is equally important in all the sciences we have. Maybe we don't go in social sciences or something like that, not to the lab, but we go to the field. We make our field experiments, and it's so important to get this hands-on technique also in sociology or psychology or whatever. And this was an answer to one of your two questions. And the other question was something like, did we already do research-based learning since a long time, or is it a new thing? Something like this. And I grew up, I did a diploma in Germany, and this was, you didn't have these modules, and you could go to the lectures or you couldn't go. Yeah, you were responsible on your own, and you had to do a lot of own studies and research. And then all this modularization came in. And this somehow hampered, this is my opinion, hampered somehow research-based learning, because you have all these formal requirements, how large the modules need to be, and how many modules there are there. And now, just recently, it's, we become more aware that we need to bring research back also to these modules. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for the nice questions from Mike. Is there any other question from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, I was kind of thinking out loudly, but maybe we are a bit, maybe we are a bit pretentious with the word research-based learning. Well, in my particular case, I cannot think of more than 4 or 5 ideas to pose in my lectures for the students to solve them, like research or like learning through research. My question is, I agree with what Kim told in the first slides, that if we call the same thing with different names, or we call the different things with the same name, then we are making confusing. Well, my question is, do we really, are we really doing learning, research-based learning, or we are just doing some kind of question-based learning? Instead of using the word research, because as I told you, well, I cannot think of actually more than 4 or 5 questions to study properly, or in the way of communication or a paper. So shouldn't we use the question-based learning or something like that, which is more a classical issue, I think. Anyway, that was a kind of a reflection. What do you think about that?
Is there anyone that would like to expand on this? It's not really a question, maybe we just like kind of...
Okay. I think questions are only one part of the story. It's really important to think about what research is in every science. And I think quite often researchers do a lot of things implicitly without knowing or or it is hard to say what you are doing in your research. It's just like car driving. If you try to explain somebody how to drive a car. So I think the main thing is to think about research, the research process, and the obstacles students have to find their way into these researches and the way of thinking research which is done in research. So I personally think we need quite a lot more research about research-based learning and the obstacles for students to come into the research process. Where are the problems? Sometimes it's quite obvious. For example, it's about mathematics. So they have problems with the mathematics, but quite often there are also a lot of other problems which we don't think about. For example, quite often it is addressed here today, attitudes and the ethics. But I personally, I'm an ethicist as a philosopher, and I know it's very, very difficult to learn to act in an ethical way. It's easy to talk about ethics, but it's very difficult to act in such a way. Because you have to reflect in a very different way than if you reflect about your reflection. That's the problem, I think, and that's the reason why we need to much more research about it.
I would like to add some words. As Uwe said, question is only one part of the process, but I think it's a very important part because research-based learning is more than developing products or problem solving. You need questions of general interest you want to answer, and you want to apply methodological scientific methods about it. You need an empirical design, and it's very important to ask scientific questions. Okay.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions from people that is online. The first one is, it seems that there are two types of research-based learning. Learning new information and learning the already known. Can someone comment on this? So I think the point is that sometimes we are asking students to find what we already know, okay? But I mean, what's really the research is to find something new. So maybe we should comment on how the first part, found what is already known, is fundamental than to inspire students to search for new answer to open questions.
Yes, I think that as almost in education, we must go to an equilibrium. Obviously, you can take a lot of time to explain a thing that people knows 100 years ago. But it is certain that, for example, I have learned new things with the experiments of my students, because if you don't do anything, you can't observe. It's the essence of the research and the essence of the university. But obviously, for me, always we must have an equilibrium. It's, for example, for me there are three kinds historically of university, especially for engineers. The French école, with point specifically in the professionalism of engineers, without a lot of research, but a lot of topics, studying mathematics, physics, because the most important thing is the profession. English people have another university, more humanistic, more open, and finally we have the traditional university from Humboldt, when you research that you teach, and you teach that you research, no? Then for me, now the important is to have a university with the equilibrium. Then you can't do all by research-based learning, but you can try, depending, for example, as before has been said, in a PhD, all must be research-based learning. But at the first course, at the second, you must increase this methodology, no?
Thank you. I don't know if someone else would like to add something, because otherwise we have another question from people online. So, question to panelists from FAO. Do you see a difference in the traditional and structured paths for PhD in terms of success and learning performance?
Now it's on, okay. Yeah, there is some difference because in a structured path, the students, the PhD students, were guided somehow through their own research, yeah? and they get knowledge on some more methodologies. These are presented to them also, yeah, and in the traditional way, you have to do everything on your own, and you don't have these modules, and this is what it makes maybe also more difficult, but also that with students we get. I don't know if we get better researchers, yeah, but it's harder to get all the knowledge that they need, yeah? And this is my opinion on this. But I don't know very much about this structured paths. We have them very rarely at our university, and but it goes more and more to this direction. And what I think is that we should take care that we don't modularize too much, so that there's enough space to unfold all the capacity that a researcher should bring with him or with her, and to carry out the research on his or her own. This is my opinion.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, there's a question here in the second row.
Thank you. My question to first panelist, Gabriel. Is there any limitation about the number of students in the class for applying research-based learning methods or the ways effectively? Upper end or
yes.
lower end?
The number of students is fundamental, yes. For example, in my group, we have about 70 students per year, 70. As I made groups of 3 persons, I have 20, 22, 23 groups. It is a lot of work, but where you have experience, you can see a good table, a figure with mistakes. For example, it is almost my activities are open-ended, but I know that if students act correctly, the saving of natural gas must be 9.5, 10%. Then you have always the reasonable answers, yes. But it is very important because if you have hundreds of students, it is impossible to do this activity, yes.
Is there any other question?
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first question is, what are the 2 criteria, or maybe the 1 criteria that makes the research-based learning the most effective? The second part is, what is the human bias? What is one human bias that makes the research-based research the least effective? Thank you.
Anybody? Shirley, please, thank you.
Oh, yes. Okay,
doesn't work. Okay, now it seems to work. I think the most helpful thing would be that you give your students quite a lot of independence, that they could work on their own and that they could make mistakes and have enough time to make mistakes and to learn from mistakes. And if you make every step very small and students don't make mistakes, they won't learn too much at the end, because they just do what you say that they should do. So I think the most effective way is to design a research-based concept in a way that they can work on their own, that they can learn time management, for example, as a further objective, but mainly that they can make mistakes.
Shule, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think that students must be motivated that if they perform such kind of research-based activities, they learn better. I mean, because you mentioned that some students are lazy and they don't want to make, experiments and so on. They must be aware that if they make the experimentation or things, they learn better. I think the motivation, the students must have that idea. And I think that the guidance of the faculty member is important, especially if you are conducting a research about something new, unknown, the results are unknown, especially. In that case, the guidance is more important because, the student doesn't know the results. There's, uncertainty. Also, the academic faculty advisor doesn't know the result, but the advisor must, guide the students actually through this process. So the guidance must be well, I think, and it is important for the performance of RBI.
Yes, I think that this is really the follow-up of what you were saying during your talk, because you were just mentioning the importance of make students autonomous and on the other hand to guide them through the experiment. So, any maybe last question?
Hello, I am Arzu Sarı from ACNO Project Development Platform. I'd like to know if partners are willing to participate in new European projects, if they're interested in new research-based learning and other European projects. Thank you.
It depends on the topic, I guess. But of course, we may be, as ITU, let me say, we are willing to participate, of course, European Union projects, according to the expertise we can contribute, yeah.
Maybe one sentence on this. I think this depends a lot of how applied the research is. For example, our engineering faculty, we have so many partners from industry and who want to participate. But if you now look to the humanities, they also have partners from outside. But it's more difficult because we don't work that applied. And so we also do research-based learning. I think research-based learning is important also in those kinds of sciences. But it's more difficult for them to get also the funding and the cooperation from outside.
I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
I just like to know if you have specific experience in, for example, Horizon projects or Erasmus Plus projects. Did you have any experience?
Sorry, experience about European projects for students, right? This is the question.
The outcome of those projects, actually, I'd like to know.
Okay. So how do how do you evaluate the outcomes of a research of an RBL activity? If you have, I don't know, any specific method, any specific protocol that you follow, or it's just, I mean, how do you feel the students is involved or is motivated? How do you judge a student?
Actually, I don't know if I understood right. We didn't conduct any European Union project about RBL, but let me say through the European Union projects, some researchers, student researchers are engaged, so they learn better, of course, because the research is guided with the industrial partner, there is also an academic partner, and some students work through the project. The topics may change, but of course the process is efficient if a good coordination can be made between the academic and industrial parts. So I think Germany has a kind of PhD process like this, with a good collaboration between the academics and the industry, I guess. But let me say for Turkey it is less common. We, of course, we have some collaboration through the European Union projects between the university and industry, but of course the students' learning and research results are augmented, I mean, as a result of those European Union projects. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately I can't answer your question, because I only can tell you what we have, Horizon projects and things like this. But the person who could answer it is unfortunately in the other session. But it's important for PhD students, these projects, this funding. And it's less important for bachelors and for masters. In some masters with master theses, they are in such projects. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't give you an exact answer to your question. Sorry.
Okay, if there are no, okay, there's another question, maybe the last one, so that we have some time before the lunch to continue this discussion, maybe offline and face-to-face. So the last question, please.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So from a student's perspective, many students in their bachelor and especially in their master thesis, they face pressure from their advisors, sometimes professors, to be a significant part in their own PhD, in their own thesis. Do you think that's an inevitable part of research-based learning, or do you think there is an opportunity or a necessity to change the PhD students' way of thinking, to motivate students to do their own research?
Was it a question to all of us or to myself?
Yes, I think whoever would like to reply is welcome.
The answer depends on whom you're asking. Yeah? So I'm the one who has to take care that some formal requirements are also fulfilled. And from this perspective, it's a very bad thing that some professors force the bachelor's or master students and give them pressure to provide something to the research projects. Yeah? But yeah, I think it's okay if the students, if they can take their input from this. Yeah? Maybe if they are hired as a how do you call it, a helper, a research helper, and if they earn something and learn and get also the practical hands-on competence. But yeah, I know sometimes in our applied sciences, this is really, really tough, yeah? And I'm not a fan of this, but ask someone else and he will give you a different answer.
I agree that students must be well guided. I mean, the whole responsibility doesn't belong to the student, of course. I mean, of course, it's his or her thesis or her project, graduation project, whatever. Therefore, the study must be conducted by the research. But the advisor is the one who must tell you about, no, don't go that way, this is the wrong way, you should go into this direction, you know. So the supervisor is the person who is experienced and who should reflect you the experience about the principles or lessons learned, you know. If an advisor doesn't, you know, give enough advice or enough guidance, then that's I think poor advising. I'm sorry, but the study is the main responsibility of the students. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm saying to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it's time to close this quite active session. Really would like to thank the speakers for their speeches and also for this lively discussion, and all the audience for your attention. So the lunch is in about 1 hour, and see you later. Thank you.